What's up guys, and welcome to my channel Flame with a 4. In this video I'm going to show you how to replace the turbo on a Mk5 Golf on a 2008 plate. This is kind of an indication if your turbo is on its way out. It will smoke really badly on startup and kind of when you're going along. White smoke, very smelly, kind of like a, I guess sort of like a really sort of gassy sort of smell, really sort of like toxic for you, so don't breathe it in. Right. So the first thing we need to do to get this turbo sorted out, guys, is removing this engine cover. Please wear gloves when you're doing something like this because obviously, as you know, it can be very messy and you want to protect your hands. You don't want to get your hands really oily and greasy. Pull this little top hose off. It's literally just pushed in. It's quite hard for me to do it because I was actually recording this mainly on my own. So as you can imagine, it was quite hard to film and do it. But we got there, so it's okay. We managed to get it down to a 26-minute video, so that's not too bad. Right, so guys, once you've got that off, it exposes everything that you need. As you can see here, there are a couple of nuts holding on the heat shield, and there's a couple of pipes that have got sort of just kind of like a clamping sort of clip to undo, and then there's just a few star heads, which we're going to tell you every single size that you'll need to do this job, and every single part you need to take off, and what I kind of come across, which was difficult to do, and just the general overhauling of the turbo itself. As you can see, the first thing we're going to start with is removing the dipstick. So we need to get that up out the way, just because that plastic housing that you can see there, the black plastic housing, is kind of in the way. We just need to remove it. So just pull that up. If you want to, you can stuff the holes with tissue paper. Probably not recommended. Probably put something down there like a bit of, cover it with a glove or something like that, or a bit of tape if you're worried about things falling down there. But I wasn't too worried. Right, so the first thing you're going to need, guys, is a T25. The T25 is going to undo that plastic hose directly underneath the T25 socket. As you can see, that's been taken out. There's just two of those, and then they lift up, and that takes off like a little clamp. As you can see, there's a little plastic clamp. Get that up out the way. That's just pushed on, but it leads down to here and connects to the turbo. So I'm going to go ahead and get the next tool that we need. So for this one, guys, we're just going to zoom in and show you. So we need a T30, and that T30 will remove the other nuts, which, as you can tell, have already been loosened. This, like here, we have one already done. Once you've got that out, guys, it's pretty much just the other bolt down there, as you can see at the bottom in the middle of the video, just there. That is going to also be a T30 as well. Once you've removed that, you are ready to take that pipe off. So just bear with us and we will get to that in a second. And there you have it, it's out. Right, so once that's done, it's kind of, you need to pull it from the turbo side to get it out first. Oh, actually, we have one more clip. Do not pull it out yet. Right, so there's another clip down here. That isn't actually connected to the hose. We don't need to worry about that at this stage. So, yeah, just get a pair of pliers or a pair of mole grips, anything like that. Just clamp the hoses together and pull them off. Just so they're off enough so they're not actually holding on to anything. And just keep them up out the way. Let's just remove this one here. Pull that up out the way as well. And then they kind of slide off quite easily, to be fair, guys. They come off very easy. This one here, it's quite difficult to do. You kind of need to push it both sides, so top and bottom. It's kind of like the breather hose, so it is very difficult to get off. And I had to use something to get it off with in the end, just to clamp it. But once you've done that, it kind of is rigid and it allows you to lift up out the way. So there you have it. It's up out the way now. Again, if you want to plug that hole, please put a glove over the top of it, or put something in there if you can. Then we need to remove that hose, which is holding onto the plastic one, and then we're going to be getting on to actually removing it. This video was filmed quite a while ago, so I kind of started to forget what comes off. But as you can tell, we've got the video of the whole thing, so we're absolutely fine on that front. There you go. So that's the plastic hose removed. It wasn't too difficult. Come off quite easily. Once, obviously, we had to take off all the clips and stuff first, so they're done, and the screws. But make sure you put everything together, guys. If you want to keep it organised, remember, please just put everything in a pile together. So You know, if you've got like the turbo hose, put all the clips and all the screws with that turbo hose, keep them in a bag, keep them safe out of the way. As you can tell there, we had to take that pipe off. That was so simple, just pull them 2 pipes off there. One goes on to that part there you go, so that was a smaller hose, and that was the bigger of the 2. Now we need to take off some more plastic. This is kind of like, I guess it's maybe like the turbo regulator or something like that. I'm not too sure what they actually do. So just remember, guys, you got to use a T25 for this one to be able to remove that section. Right, so there's one at the top and there's one at the bottom. They're very difficult to get to, but you can do it. The bottom one takes a little bit longer, but once you've removed them, it's literally just pull it out and there you have it. Just be careful with that. Cover it with something if you want to. Obviously, I didn't in this video, but if you want to keep these parts like really safe, I did this in a unit where it's like really clean, really safe from stuff. But if you did it outside, you know, you'd want to make sure that these parts are not contaminated by any moisture or water because you don't want anything to rust. Now we're going to be removing the cover for the turbo. So basically this is kind of like a heat shield for the turbo, which we're going to be removing. You will need a 10mm socket, preferably on an extension with a long socket, just so you can get it off quite easily. As you can tell, there are 2 here on this back section, just before the ignition coils, so just remember to remove those first, and then we'll get on to the next bits. Down here, guys, there was another 10mm. Just probably best to use a 10mm spanner, because obviously it's quite hard to get a socket down there and a ratchet on the end of it as well. There's not much movement, and you don't want to be putting anything through the radiator which is so close to that. So remember, just remove that, keep it all together, and then you should be good to go to lift it off. It comes off that simple. Okay guys, so now we've revealed all the pipes, what we need to do is just decide what pipes are best to come off first, what brackets we need to get loose. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. You will need a 13mm long extension socket, just to keep them out the way, so you've got a bit of play to do it. As you can see, there's a bracket there, and there's also another bracket holding on that pipe, which is sort of like a cold feed pipe to the turbo itself. As you can see, we have taken those 3 13mm sockets off, and we have taken off the Jubilee clip. There's water going through there, guys, so just please remember to plug it up with something. You don't want to have to worry about the turbo not getting anything, so put it in the end, put the Jubilee clip back over, make sure it's not leaking, and you've got a nice fix there. As you can tell, it goes all the way around into the turbo itself. It's a little bit rusty, so I would recommend if you could get some more screws to replace them, or just clean up the ones you've got. You will need to undo that with another T30. It looks like we've got a lot of T30s, a lot of T25s, but I'm just telling you in what sequence you need to be undoing the turbo in. So as you can tell there, I've got it loose already, and do not drop it on the floor. I didn't manage to drop it on the floor, so that's good. And again, keep everything together. So if this screw comes out of this pipe, you know, if you want to, the good thing about obviously this video is that you can refer back and look where things go. So that's the only good thing about it, really. Now we're going to be loosening everything off, just trying to take everything apart. We've gone underneath because what we need to do is we need to move the radiator cowling. So basically where the radiator cowling is that holds the fans in place, that's kind of in the way to what we want to undo. So the best thing to do is, if you can, jack the car up or put the car up on the ramp and remove this clip. As you can tell, this clip is a nightmare to get to and undo, especially using one hand whilst trying to do it at the same time. I'm just leaving it running because obviously I want to show you the difficultness of having to do it. Obviously everything doesn't come off easily, and for me this was one of the main things that was a bit of a bitch to get off. And I'm going to show you how much of a bitch it was to get off. We're kind of going off camera as it's so tightly in there. It might just be the fact that my one is just stubborn and your one might come off a little bit easier. As you can see, it does slide into like some sort of bracket, which keeps it in place, but now it's loose. There you go, we managed to get it off. So yours should look like that, little purple end there. Make sure that, as you can see, that side has fallen down, so that's the way you want to get it out. So you want to pull it down and out that way. It just slides down after that. Very simple to take off. But when you've taken it off, put it somewhere safe, guys. You don't want to get that broken. It's a very expensive piece to buy. The next thing I had to do was remove the airbox. The airbox was going to be in the way. You might be able to do it without removing the airbox. I couldn't do it without removing the airbox, just because I like to have space when I'm working. I don't want things to get in the way, and just distracting you from what you got to do. So the best thing to do, if you can, is if there's something in the way and you think, oh, that's going to stop me from doing what I want to do, then just move it. Just move it. It's not going to take long to take the airbox off, as you're going to find out. And while you got the airbox off, probably a good idea to maybe get yourself a new air filter. Put a new air filter on it, just so that obviously once you start the car up again fresh and you've got a new turbo on it, you've got a new air supply going to it as well, which is obviously going to be good for you. Right, so this is the box that we need to undo. As you can see, there's just a Phillips screwdriver, big head Phillips screwdriver holding it in place, and then there's a few clips kind of holding the box in place as well. Best thing to do is take the top off. I'm not sure how many screws are in there. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 screws holding that in. Might be 9 or 10, probably 9, because it's probably odd, isn't it? And there you go, just lift the air filter out. Good opportunity again, guys, to be able to clear the airbox out, because there might be some stuff in there. You could just obviously use a hoover if you're not doing it, and that just exposes there where it's held in place. So there's a bracket here, and then way down on the right at the bottom, there is another sort of lug that it's held into. So this is not a screw down there, that's just a bracket that sort of just holds it on. And the only thing that's really holding it on, whether this hasn't been put back together before properly, you will need a T30 to undo that bolt. As you can see there, we already undone it a little bit just to make it easier. And then it should be the case of just lifting it out. There you have it. So there's a little drain pipe there, I guess if any water got in. And there's just 2 lugs it sits on, and then there's 1 bolt holding it on. That might be right, but I've had the chain done on this before, so it might be that somebody didn't put something back, but it seems like that's all there was to do. Right, so now we've got to go back to our T25 again, guys. With the T25, what we want to do is remove this side airbox thingy. I'm not too sure what it is, just I'd say like as a guide to the airbox. Let's just say it's an airbox guide. Just because when you're trying to get those bolts off to hold the exhaust on, it's just all in the way. It's just everywhere you don't want it to be. And again, like I said, if you like struggling and you have better tools than I have, then go ahead and do it that way. But I prefer to remove that. It was just 2 T25s just to get out of the way, just a little bit of extra space that you need to get through and do it. As you can see here, we have now got the radiator fan cowling with the radiator fans in, just sitting there on the floor. Trying to show you these T25s and these T30s, but every time the light gets on it, it makes it difficult to see. And I'm just showing you that it took a T25 to get the radiator cowling off. So when we was underneath there, which we didn't show you before, there was 4 T25s holding it on. A couple of mine were missing, to be fair, and I did replace them with a couple of stainless steel bolts, which was obviously better than the ones that were on there. Next thing you need to do is obviously take this is kind of like where the exhaust section of it connects to the turbo, and there is a triangular gasket in there which you will need to replace as well. And you just need to get it loose for now. They were 13 mil, they were 13 or 14 mil, I'm not too sure. I'll find out and put it in the description brackets. Once you've done that, as you can see, that sits behind that other turbo lube pipe. You need to take that out. You can pause this video if you need to, guys, if it's going too fast for you. And then you just need to pull the bottom one out. Only a little bit of water will leak out of this hole, not a lot at all. And then what we're left with is that last top bracket. So you just need to take that off as well, which is obviously a 13 mil. And then you need to go ahead and undo that top oil lube pipe, which feeds the turbo the oil. That is a 17mm socket there. The next thing you need to do, guys, is take off this, I guess this is the induction pipe. So the induction pipe is here. So you can either undo that with a flathead screwdriver, or I think it's a 7mm small socket, which tends to undo those Jubilee clips, which gets them off nicely. There you go, 7mm. And then you need to go back underneath the car again and remove the bottom part of the intercooler hose piping, which is leading to it. So how did we get them off? We got them off with a T30 again. We're going to try and show you here that there's a T30 holding on this intercooler pipe. As you can tell, that goes up from the bottom. So where we took that other rubber pipe off, that's all at the top. You need to undo or loosen this wire off, which goes to the, let's just try and get it right, the lambda sensor. So the lambda sensor wire is connected to that, so you need to get that off out the way. Once you got it off, it kind of leads up there, as you can tell, kind of with a little bit of jiggling around and kind of like a bit of a manoeuvring. It does come off easily, but it exposes that pipe that we need to get to. This is the crucial pipe, which I like to call the nightmare pipe, and that's where the oil lube pipe is, you know, for the turbo. And it's a nightmare to get to. So that's just the T30s that we're holding on the induction pipe. Now we're going to go try and get to the other pipe, which you can see up there. I just keep saying pipe, don't I? We had to take off, again, another intercooler pipe, because what I found was that the alternator was in the way. So what the best thing to do was pin the belt up out the way. So basically get the tensioner, pull the tensioner back and pin it into place so your belt is loose. Remember guys, this is very important. If you're taking your belt off or you're moving your belt, take a picture like that of how your belt looks, and remember that is how it goes on, because you need to know that. I will tell you an error that I made. Disconnecting the battery. Please make sure you disconnect the battery if you're going to be starting to mess about with the alternator. Right, so we'll come back to the alternator in a moment. Once the alternator's been pulled out the way, so you don't need to undo it properly, you just need to pull it forward out the way. You will need to take off the nuts that are holding the manifold to the engine itself. So as you can tell, they will probably just need a good clean up. Please don't break these off guys. If you break off these nuts in the head, you're going to be screwed. So just be very careful, plenty of lube, and they're 12mm bolts holding that manifold onto the vehicle itself. Just be careful guys, please do not break anything, because it will cost you money if you're going to be tempting to do something like this yourself. Plenty of WD-40. As you can see, we've taken the bolt out of the alternator, pulled it forward, which allows us to get exposed and take off the turbo. The turbo is really easy to get off after that. All we had to do is slide it off the brackets. As you can see there, where the manifold is, it's got, just clean up those ends, just get it all clean everything up, make sure everything's good and good to go. And as you can see here, this is the old turbo where it's come off. Please replace the manifold gasket. I can't stress enough to replace the manifold gasket. You need to get that pipe off. The new turbo, if you've got a new turbo like me, a genuine turbo, you'll see that that turbo pipe is still on there, so you'll need to get that off. And here is the problem and why the thing didn't work. That propeller that's in there, that spins around, was loose, very, very loose, and basically rattling around in there, which was not giving the turbo enough oil and enough ratio to work. So what I did, why I had all the pieces off, I thought I'd use some rust inhibitor to clean up all the bits that I'm going to put back on. So I used some grey scotch, and I used some panel wipe to get off any of the grease and dirt. And then I kind of keyed it all up. It doesn't look like I did, but I did all this off camera because obviously I'm trying to make the video as short as possible. And just give it a nice spruce up, guys. I mean, just got to keep the components of your vehicle running longer. It's best to just, you know, just keep them clean, keep them pristine, because obviously stuff like this, you want it to last. So I took this pipe off, painted that as well to keep that pipe nice and clean, just because obviously your engine is important. The cleaner it is, the better. We got this gasket which you'll need to replace, so you need to get a new one of those if it doesn't already come with the turbo. Generally they do. Give the nuts a little spruce up, just clean them up, give them a little spray on the top there. Made sure, as you can see, every bolt goes with everything that I've took off. Gave that little bottom hose a nice clean up there too. You know, see, there you go, there's the manifold, there's the bolts that go with it, that's everything. We're going to go and show you a more in-depth video of how it's moving. As you can see, that should not be moving around in there like that. That should be solid. It should spin freely, but it shouldn't move backwards and forwards. moving backwards and forwards is a big no-no, which means there's obviously a problem there, a very big problem, and that is why we're having to do this. With the new turbo, I gave it a little spruce up, so basically just to sort of make it last longer, stop it rusting and getting worse over time, I cleaned it all up. You need to have a look in here, but if you can, leave the covers on as long as possible when you're doing stuff like this. I'm just going to quickly show you that there's no movement, solid, there will be, you can spin it, but there will be no movement in the propeller itself, which is what you want. Try and keep these caps on as long as possible, guys, just because when you're putting it back on and when you're seating it back into place, the last thing you want to do is drop anything in there, because the turbo is so important and very, very important for it to get the right ratio of oil, and my one's obviously water cooled and the right ratio of water as well, so just please make sure you do. Change any rubber gaskets you can. If you can afford to replace the rubber gaskets to stop it from leaking, do so, and do it now, because you're not going to get to this again without taking the turbo off, okay? That's how that goes on, just so you know. Right, guys, so that was a nightmare to get to this one. As you can tell, it is quite far up there to remove that turbo lube pipe. But with getting your hands in there, plenty of light, with a T25, you can get that off, and you need to replace that gasket. That is the one that you need to replace the gasket for. Once that's done, remember, get new banjo bolts, new washers. Please make sure you get everything as new as possible when doing this, because if it doesn't get the right amount of oil, you're just going to be doing this job again, and you don't want to do it twice, trust me. Right, as you can see, we've seated the turbo back on, we've put the new exhaust manifold gasket into place, and we've done the nuts up as tight as we need to. The one that's obviously very difficult is that turbo lube pipe that's down there. As you can see, that's onto the engine. You need to make sure that's done up tight. Do not put the alternator or push the alternator back on until you know that pipe is done up tightly, because if it starts leaking afterwards, you're going to have to do all that again and remove that, and that's going to be a bit of a nightmare to do, and that's not what you want to be doing twice. I'm just trying to show you the angles of these pipes and where things are, just to show you that, as you can see, this one down here is a very very hard one to get to, and that leads up onto the top of the turbo itself. Just trying to show you that we had to move the alternator quite a bit to get to that pipe to get it done up well. There's no other way around this. You have to do it that way, because if you rigidly put this into place, you cannot get the turbo underneath, and you do not want to kink or bend that pipe in any way. Remember to put back everything underneath how you took it off. You've seen the video of how to take it off. It's easy to put it back together. You just need to obviously follow it in reverse. I'm just showing you a few steps. This is how my belt went back on. How it came off, sorry, this is how it went back on. It goes on exactly the same way as it did. If you're not too sure, please draw a diagram. As you can tell, this pipe here, the pipe on the right hand side, as you are a driver, best to replace the clips and everything. Put this radiator cowling, obviously where the fans are, that just slides up and clips back into place. Replace all the bolts, push that pipe back on, put them screws back in, push the pipes back over, and make sure all the clips are put back in the correct order. They need to be in the correct order, guys, because if you don't do them up, don't do them up too tight, but just put everything back in a manner of, you know, how it felt to take it off. If they were done up, you know, like hand tight, make sure you do them up hand tight. But with the oil lube pipes, make sure they're done up tight enough to a correct ratio so that nothing goes wrong, because you need to make sure that this is done. Guys, I'm going to mention it now. Please make sure you get yourself a fresh air filter. This one's got a couple of little marks on my grubby fingers, and put things back where you found them. Going back through this, the biggest advice I can give you as you watch me do this is remember to prime the turbo first. Priming the turbo is before you put the turbo lube pipe on, which I haven't shown you yet, and I'm hoping you're watching to the end of this video so you don't do it wrong, is squirt some fresh oil into the turbo lube pipe hole to lube up the turbo for first initial startup. If you can't do that, guys, the best thing to do is do this method that I did, which was remove the coil packs, turn it over a few times, crank it over. Once you crank it over, then what you need to do is obviously do it without them connected, put them all back together, and then crank it up, and you should have a running turbo, guys. Thanks for watching my channel. Please subscribe and share this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.